General quarters, all hands man your battle stations.
Broadcasting live on WNN 1470 AM, 95.3 FM, iHeartRadio, and the World Wide Web. This is Make America Think Again with your Google Blacklisted host, Tom Trento.
Danger, Will Robinson. Danger. No, Will Robinson. Danger.
What was that? I hear all kinds of noise here in the studio. Hi, Tom Trento. Good morning, everybody. 11:04 in the morning on the 17th of December. How many days? 8 days till Christmas. What a show we have for you. Great show. Why is it a great show?
Because you're here.
Because that's right. Because I'm here. What else do you need? Trento's here. You know, Trento is a noun. It's a name. And I had as an opening today, Mark. I was going to enlighten our listening audience with information about International Pronoun Day. Okay. Did you know there was an International Pronoun Day?
I didn't know there was a pronoun day.
Not too many people
I know
know
there was
that.
a pronoun day, let alone International Pronoun Day.
It was an International Pronoun Day. It isn't today. It's the fourth Thursday in October. Mark your calendars. Fourth Thursday in October.
Got it.
But the Washington Post came out with an article. The Washington Post, which also doubles on the side of delivering packages to your home as Amazon. Jeff Bezos started Amazon. Pretty cool.
Bezos or Bezos?
Bezos, whatever. Pretty cool company. Made a few billion dollars and went and bought the Washington Post. And if you remember, and this is very important because today's a historic day as it relates to the impeachment nonsense going on in Washington, and that's the thrust of our first half hour. Second half hour, we have John Guandolo, expert on Islamic Jihad, with us. We're going to look at the convergence of three movements taking place before our very eyes, some in Washington, D.C., and see how they relate to the 2020 campaign, particularly the campaign here in Florida. Second half of the show. First half, we're going to look at this nonsensical impeachment activity coming out of Washington, but Jeff Bezos, taking his trillions and billions of dollars, goes and buys the Washington Post, and one of the first journalistic escapades he launched was to direct, to appoint, to commission a team of 20 journalists in 2015 after the current president and the next president of the United States, Donald Trump.
18 minutes.
18 minutes, yeah, after he was elected. But Bezos started early on. He started in 2015. And he said, I'm dedicating these 20 people to dig up dirt. You talk about digging up dirt on Donald Trump. Their job at the Washington Post, which used to be a credible newspaper, their job was to impeach the credibility and integrity of Donald Trump so he would never become the president. Well, they just came out with an article saying that they want people to stop making fun of International Pronoun Day. Seriously. They said it's not nice for
me, haters.
Yeah, for people that choose maybe a different gender than they actually are. It's not nice to use a pronoun that identifies the gender they were born with. Up until about a year or two ago, they decided to change their mind. So now we need to start calling them by the gender they prefer. And nonsense. I mean, but I'm going to bring that up. I have some great stuff on that.
Blame God on this,
Blame God, exactly. Oh my God, the guy was supposed to be a girl. I made him a boy. What am I supposed to do? In any event, let's go to Washington, D.C. and Mitch McConnell just eviscerated Senator Schumer, who is saying, okay, now the clown show has to continue. We did our buddies in the House, our Democrat buddies, our progressive buddies, our doctrinaire Marxist brothers, our real Marxist brothers and sisters, had a great time beating up the current president to try to keep him from getting reelected. Now we want you to do the same thing, Senator Mitch McConnell, in the Senate.
You mean Cocaine Mitch, right?
Cocaine Mitch. I didn't know about Cocaine Mitch. So why don't you tell?
No, you got. I should show you.
All right, we'll tell you later. Well, Cocaine Mitch.
All right, go ahead. Cocaine Mitch.
There's memes going around. I guess about a year ago, when he was running for re-election 2018. A opponent found some nonsense that Mitch McConnell's wife's father's shipping company, there were 90 pounds of cocaine from Colombia. It turned out not to be true, but the memes started.
Cocaine
Mitch McConnell, the squarest,
the turtle.
this guy probably waited until his 21st birthday to have a drink, if he ever had a drink. Driving on the 395, going around the Beltway in D.C., he probably has a governor put on his car so it doesn't go over 55. This is Mitch McConnell.
Yeah.
So the meme started, Cocaine Mitch, Cocaine Mitch.
Yeah. What was it? What was the funny one you just read, Tom? Hi, I'm Cocaine Mitch. I traffic cocaine and appoint Supreme Court judges, and I'm all out of cocaine.
Yeah, and I'm all out of cocaine. So he just opened the proceedings today, saying, "I'm not playing this game. I'm not playing this game." Let's listen to Mitch McConnell, Tom Trento, WNN with J. Mark here at 11:09 in the morning on a beautiful December 17th. Tell your friends to tune in to the Trento Show. We here make America think again. And what I want you to learn today is that this whole effort is vitriol, hatred, a disgust for the principles of the president. That's why. If he were as tough and gruff and nasty as everybody accuses him, but he were arguing for Democrat principles, pro-abortion, open borders, no wall, crazy stuff like granting licenses to illegals. That's so crazy. Nobody can do that. Oh, except
they do.
The state of Washington, the state of New York just approved it, and yesterday there are hundreds and hundreds of illegal people lining up to get driver's licenses.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah. The Democrats, when we, the Republicans, say they need a photo ID to register to vote, and oh no, poor people, they don't have the means to get a photo ID. What about a friggin' illegal person getting a photo? You see these hypocrites? But here's my point. If Donald Trump was a Democrat arguing for the Democrat side, the Democrats would be in love with him, and they'd love his personality. They'd love his gruffness. They'd love his tweeting, just like we do on the Republican side.
Right.
Not so much all the crazy, some of the stuff he does, but they love it because he is defending, advancing their policies. That's what they hate about him. He's successful at advancing conservative policies. And here's a test in your own intellectual head. Tomorrow, like this congressman from New Jersey is going to switch from Democrat to Republican, Trump has an epiphany and says, you know what? I'm done with you Republicans. I'm going to be a Democrat.
Talk about leaving a sinking ship, man.
What do you think the Democrats would do?
Oh, man. I tell you.
They would have a little bit of, really? And if he goes there, no, absolutely. Look, let's send people for abortions. Knock down that wall.
Right.
And he has an executive order. He knocks down the wall. Screw Israel. Invade Israel. And they go, this guy's for real. Yeah. They would fall in love with him.
I know.
Because of his policies. This circus is because of his policies, which we conservatives hold to.
And also Cocaine Mitch, he's jumping on board. He was kind of like a never Trumper. Now he's on the Trump train. In fact, he's the engineer in the Trump train in the Senate. Because
there's three components to good government: the economy, social concern, and national security.
He sees it.
On all three, Donald Trump, in spite of all these nitwits on him each and every day, have advanced this United States economically, have advanced the social agenda, just by the mere fact that people now say, and it's kind of corny, they say Merry Christmas again.
Right.
But that's a cultural distinctive that's unique to this president. He has not, as our former president said, let's give honor to the Prophet Muhammad. Let's give honor to the Prophet Muhammad? Give me a break. And on national security, social issues, and on, what's the third one?
I don't know.
No, the economy. The economy
national security,
is growing like crazy.
Yeah.
The national security, we're more respected because of a tough leader. So, please, folks, in this first half hour, understand the impeachment proceedings are a fraud.
Yep.
Mitch McConnell is not going to buy it.
And a little setup on this clip is that he's saying, you guys need to do your jobs because we're doing our job. Democrats, the House did their job, and it's in the Constitution. And watch him just eviscerate the Democrats on this one.
The Democratic leader's letter to me, by the way, by way of the press, literally misquoted the Constitution. Senator Schumer wrote that we should exercise, quote, the Senate's sole power of impeachment under the Constitution with integrity and dignity. He attributed to the Senate, quote, the sole power of impeachment. Well, there's his problem, Mr. President. That's the role the Constitution gives actually to the House, not to the Senate. To give it to the House. Article 1, Section 2 says the House of Representatives shall have the sole power of impeachment. Doesn't sound ambiguous to me. If my colleague wants to read about our responsibilities here in the Senate, he needs to turn to the next page. Article 1.
Read that damn Constitution, Schumer.
Says, the Senate shall have the sole power to try all impeachments. We don't create impeachments over here, Mr. President. We judge them. The House chose this road. It's their duty to investigate. It's their duty to meet the very high bar for undoing a national election. As Speaker Pelosi.
And that's the core essence. He's saying, don't ask us to do your job for you. You guys are the prosecutors in this trial. Prosecute, do the investigation, do everything else. We're the judge and jury. Jury being the Senate, the judge being the Supreme Court of the United States. Don't ask us to do your job for you. Don't ask us to do all these investigations. We don't do that. We're simply the jury. Do your job. Don't try to put it on us.
Well,
you
yeah,
got a case.
And the background for that. Again, this is a history lesson today. And for those of you, you're driving in your automobiles, hang in here. Make America think again. We want you to understand the historic significance of today. And look, everybody's fed up with this. It's Christmas time. We got families. It's Hanukkah coming up. We want to go get our homes nice and all this stuff. But don't miss that you are living in the midst of a very unique historic time that will occupy chapters in future history books. And when you're an old grandfather or grandmother somewhere telling your kiddies, Papa, it happened in 2019 and 20 with President Trump. How did he wind up having 4 terms as a president?
You just started.
When Trump the other day said, I may think about a 3rd term. Boom.
Oh, we're talking about nuclear explosion.
Started to explode. Papa, how did I do 4 terms? Well, son, just push the button on the side of your head that accesses the internet, which is a chip that's in your head.
Right.
And turn to page 7011. Tells the whole story.
You blink and turn to the next page.
Yeah, you just do that. That's what will happen. But today is historic, and tomorrow they're actually going to have the vote. Jerry Nadler has a family emergency. And,
right.
If it is, we pray for the guy. If it isn't, expose the fraud. But here's the background. They hate this guy, and as I said, they hate his principles and his policies. But let's just take a quick look at President Jefferson, 3rd president of the United States. Tremendous guy. When you make it to money, you're a big dude. Well, he was guilty, if you want to get impeached, he was guilty of miscegenation.
What the heck is that, huh?
What that is you're screwing your slave lady, and you're having little kids,
which he did.
mixed kids.
He did.
He did about 4 or 5 times, some different slaves, some say, the whole thing. Talk about being impeached. The guy made it through. Calvin, who was President Cleveland and President Harding, both fathered children out of wedlock.
Surprise.
Even President Ford had an affair. Not a whole lot of people know this. He had an affair with an East German spy.
Really?
She was running a honeypot operation on him. This is when he was a congressman.
I'm not talking about Kennedy.
And no, we didn't get to Kennedy yet. This is Gerald Ford. When he was a congressman, he had an affair with a East German spy. They ran an operation on him, and guess who used that to blackmail him? None other than the head of the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover. And we all know about Bill Clinton, who did some nasty stuff in the Oval Office, which in and of itself you would think would be impeachable, but the Democrats said, no, that's his private time, that was consensual.
Yeah.
But now in the Me Too day, you think he would have gotten away with that?
No way.
But he lied. He lied to a grand jury when he was questioned. Go to John F. Kennedy. Man, he had the list of people that he was involved with as president. He was involved with Marilyn Monroe, Marlene Dietrich, Kim Novak, Angie Dickerson, Gene Tierney, and others. I mean, a whole host of people.
The press was running cover for him.
The press was running cover for JFK and his extracurricular activity. Now, this is serious stuff. What did the President Trump do? Well, here's what they said he did.
Well, just back up a little bit.
Sure.
I could care less what a president does in his bedroom, be quite honest, as long as he runs the economy. And I go all the way back to
I don't
Kennedy.
think Clinton sleeps in the Oval Office.
Well,
that's the people's bedroom.
That's a little bit past the bar
That's
for me. It's pushing the bar.
On the wrong floor of the White House.
But it's still not, total. I never agreed with the impeachment of Clinton, to be quite honest with you, because of that. He shouldn't have lied, and I'm glad he lost his law license, but to remove him because he was doing a good job with the economy. Okay, all right. That's
another story.
Yeah, but
because I was there, I was involved in the U.S. Congress at that time.
But anyway, this thing that's going on with Trump is just so out of bounds, and that's what Mitch McConnell is saying. He's saying, hey, listen, you guys don't have anything on the investigation side. You guys did not do your job. Don't ask us to do your job for you. That's the reason I think he's right to get rid of this thing immediately.
Well, my view is that what the Senate should do, I mean, they shouldn't even dignify this kangaroo court, this phony court, shouldn't even dignify it with a trial of any sort. You could in civil matters. I have been involved in a few civil matters in my life. If you're an activist, you get involved in civil matters. And there's a procedure known as summary judgment. And there's legal debate. And as a quick background, as a young kid, I wanted to go into the FBI. And in those days, you had to become an attorney or an accountant. Those were the two areas because you deal with illegal stuff and white collar money crime. So, I was taking the track of becoming an attorney. I did an undergraduate degree in law enforcement. Then I was headed to law school before I had a complete change in my life and went basically as a Christian activist into different schools. So I know a little bit. I'm not a lawyer, but I play one on the radio. A little bit about, and I've been involved in about 10 or 15 different legal trials and hearings and all kinds of different things.
All right.
There's a civil procedure in a civil matter. There's a procedure called a summary judgment, where the judge looks at the case before you go to trial. You do your voir dire, you pick the jury, all this stuff. You're ready for opening arguments, and the judge looks at everything and goes, "You know what? This is nonsense.
I'm throwing this out."
Yeah. Why are we going to waste time? I mean, the prosecution has not met the level
of probable cause, right?
Of probable cause, or depending on whatever the
legal
civil issue is. So I am the judge. That's why I was put here. I'm judging. There's no case here. But first of all, one of the sides has to move for a summary judgment. And then the judge evaluates the merits of the case and says, you know what, I'm granting it. We're not wasting everybody's time.
Well, the reason that's important, and I just want to make this, because if you have the ability to do a summary judgment like that and just throw it out, it stops, these, garbage cases from coming up. And in the Senate side, it stops these garbage impeachment inquiries coming up. It's like, hey, we want to impeach him because it's Tuesday. Okay, I'm sorry.
Well, I fear that the Republicans, to get even, when the next Democrat president, let the sovereign make up their mind. What are we doing, ladies and gentlemen? Unbelievable.
I know. It's crazy.
All right, 11:28 in the morning, almost 11:29 in the morning. Tom Trento, your host. The Trento Show. I need a pronoun. The him show. The he show.
The Sis Trento
The
show.
Sis Trento Show. By the way, impeach comes from the Latin. I am a master of languages. Mark.
What does it mean? What does it mean?
I studied in high school Latin for 2 years. Conjugatamo, surely you must know, and then I forgot the rest of how it goes. I was not a very good student, but I did study Latin for 2 years.
I love the etymology of words. I really do.
It comes from the Latin impedicarde. 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 That's the Latin, and it means to catch or to entangle. So if you impeach someone's testimony, you catch them in a lie or in a misstatement.
Oh, okay.
You entangle them, and then you discredit them. So coming out of the Latin, the framers used it in such a way, okay, that we would impeach. We would entangle this person and get him out of office.
Oh,
so tomorrow, we're going to have more tomorrow on this nonsensical impeachment kangaroo court that's going on, violating the desire of and the work of 63 million people. And we have one person now with us on the line.
Johnny G. Man.
John G. Man. John G., are you there, John Guandolo?
I am here, and I am me.
You are you. I had a whole opening on, I guess you're not aware that in October it's International Pronoun Day. Are you aware of that, John?
I was not aware of that.
Okay. You listen to the show, not tomorrow because we're going to do the impeachment, but listen on Thursday and I'll tell you all about International Pronoun Day. Okay?
I do want to say, though, that there is somebody wrote a theme song called Johnny G. Man. So I'll send that to Mark and he can listen to it.
We could use it as a bumper on our show for sure. All right. Well, we have John Guandolo live coming in from another state, and he was here just last week.
He was. He's in studio.
We had the United West team in, and John is the founder and director of Understanding the Threat of global warming. How did you come around to really understand global warming, John?
You know what? Your humor never ceases to amaze me.
That's the greatest threat to mankind. Global warming.
Well, actually, according to U.S. Navy admirals and a few generals, it is the greatest threat to the United States because
I know.
They're insane.
So what threat are you talking about, understand?
The threat of the Marxist counterstate and the Islamic counterstate, and we focus probably a most significant amount of our energy on the Islamic counterstate, the Islamic movement, specifically here in the United States.
He's a hater. He's a hater, Tom.
Yeah. John's background.
A lover of liberty and a defender of the innocent. Yes.
John's background for those of you just tuning in, Tom Trento, 11:32 in the morning, WNN, 1470 on the AM side, ladies and gentlemen. If you're traveling from Miami all the way north to northern Palm Beach, probably 80 miles. And the AM signal gets a little weak, as it does in some areas, some static in lines.
iHeart Radio.
Switch over to 95.3 on the FM side. If you're driving a 1998 Chevy van at 250,000 miles like I do, there is no AM side. So I have to use the FM side. And you also use iHeart Radio.
iHeart's best. Anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world. Worldwide, internationally.
Yep. So start telling your friends to start listening. We're going to start doing some heavy promotion. But John Guandolo is a graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy. Went into the Marines as a combat Marine.
Go Navy. Go Navy. They won.
Oh, yeah. Navy won. That's pretty good. Then after he left, he was recruited into the Federal Bureau of Investigation, a place that I wanted to spend some time with. And
God called you.
In that capacity, right after 9/11, What year did you go into the FBI, John?
1996, Tom.
So 96.
Wow.
So
Yeah, summer
where
of
were
96.
you on 9/11? Where were you? You were an FBI agent. Where were you?
I was at the Pentagon. Actually, when the planes hit, we were a few hours out of town doing some SWAT training. And we obviously packed all our stuff up. And
Hey, I'm losing your phone. You're walking around or something.
Yeah, we're losing your phone.
Oh, I was in SWAT training the morning of 9/11. And actually, when we watched it, we watched the second plane hit the tower in the command shed of where we were. And we immediately packed up and drove back to Washington, D.C., and I spent the bulk of the day at the Pentagon, which is where I ended up spending a great deal of my time doing recovery operations there and then investigative work surrounding the 9/11 attacks.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, we didn't know you were actually there.
Yeah.
I mean, where were you physically when the plane hit the Pentagon?
So we were we were out of town at doing SWAT training in Southern Virginia, and we literally that morning we were actually doing hand-to-hand training, and we were right next to one of the command offices, and one of the guys stepped out and said, "Hey, you need to come look at this. There's something going on." And we walked in, and we were watching on the big screen as the second plane hit the tower, and we all knew what that meant. So we got everybody together and packed up all the vehicles and cut short the training and went back home. It was a pretty surreal experience.
Wait a minute.
We
now,
were back
when it
we
hit,
made the land speed record time back to Washington, D.C.
When it hit, we because it's so many years ago, there's kind of a fog about Islam at the turn of the new millennium, 2000. That's a nice religion. They do their crazy stuff, whatever. But a couple of radicals did some stuff in the 90s, blew up a couple embassies. But that's boys being boys. When the plane hit, who in the FBI knew we are under attack by Islamic jihadis? Who knew that?
Because I didn't.
I think there were quite a few folks that understood that that was Osama bin Laden. That was Al Qaeda right off the bat. There were, as Claire Lopez tells the story, there were people in the FBI or the CIA who thought it was the Russians, but right when it happened. But the reality is, I think there was an understanding it was Al Qaeda, because prior to that there had been a lot of concern of an impending attack, and we knew that there was an attack coming. And we spoke about the threat very differently on 9/11 than we do today. I think we were a little more honest about it, and the FBI was certainly more honest about it 30 years prior to 9/11. Not as much today, obviously.
Right.
Well, with that background, John.
Let me share something with you, if
Sure.
I might.
Yeah.
I actually am getting ready to put this on my website, but I obtained a copy dated September 30th, 1973, of an FBI special report entitled "The Black Muslim Movement: Potential for Violence," and it's a very short 8-page report. But here's what I wanted to read from it, because this is what the FBI put out in 1973 about Muslims. It says, it talks about Muhammad. It explains what Islam is. It was founded by Muhammad in Saudi Arabia. And it says this, quote, "He formed an army, Muhammad, and eventually dominated the Medina area, setting up a theocratic state. Muhammad moved on to conquer Mecca and all of Arabia, Persia, and Ethiopia. He died in 632 AD, and his followers then continued to spread Islam throughout the Mediterranean into Spain and southern France." So back then, and then it goes on and it talks about some other things, but it was very clear that Muhammad led an army, and he was the perfect example, and his followers followed his example. To say that in the FBI today would be heretical. to the teachings of what the government is saying about Islam being a peaceful faith.
Well, John, you taught me this. It even goes back further to that, all the way back to John Adams. It goes all the way back to the Barbary War. In his writings, didn't he say the same thing? I mean, from what I remember on your teachings?
That's right. The first war America fought after the American Revolution was against Muslims, the Barbary pirates, the Barbary states, which were Muslim states. And as a matter of fact, Ambassador John Adams and Ambassador Thomas Jefferson to England and France, they met with the ambassador from Tripoli to Great Britain, the potentate, and they asked him, why are you seizing U.S. ships? Why are you kidnapping our citizens? And his response to them, they wrote in a letter to the Continental Congress, which now sits in the Library of Congress, and essentially, if I can paraphrase it, it's that Islam, those who don't accept Islam, we have the right to wage war against you. And those who die and slain in battle are sure to go to paradise. And that the Quran is meant to be the law of the land. So what he said to Jefferson and Adams is exactly what ISIS and Al-Qaeda tell us, which is exactly what the Muslim Brotherhood tells us, which is exactly what Iran tells us, which is exactly what every jihadi or terrorist, if you will, tells us that we've killed or captured in Europe, in the United States, or on the battlefields of Syria, Africa, Afghanistan, Iraq. It's the same message, and it's what they teach their children in U.S. Islamic schools, by the way. So it's one very clear message. We just refuse to actually listen and believe.
John,
that
if
that's
this
what
is
it
Tom,
is.
if you took that historic document, where it's written like that, and sat down with the current director of the FBI, Christopher Wray, and said, "Hey, look at this. Look at how our history started with fighting Islam, and from the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, where the battles were taking place in Tripoli." What would he say? What do you think he would say?
Well, I can't predict what he would say, but I can tell you what many government officials have told me, and that is that there are many different versions of Islam. And so our strategy is to get good Muslims, whatever that is, to help us against bad Muslims, whatever that is. That is the U.S. government's position on this. They don't see it as an immediate threat. They don't see it as a subversive movement. They do not understand the average, quite frankly, the average military general has very little understanding of political warfare, much less the average State Department senior official or White House national security official or National Security Council member. And that's the problem. And so when you actually break down the strategy and ask them, can you legally define for me, since you're building policy on this statement, what is a good Muslim? And then usually the response is, well, someone who's not violent, who's just, praying, going to mosque, they don't want any part of violence. So I say, so espionage is okay? Counterintelligence is okay. Conspiring to overthrow the government is okay. Conspiring to commit murder is okay. What is it you're saying? Nonviolence is the line. And since 9/11, I can tell you, in the FBI, CIA, DHS, since it's been formed, the national security staff, violence is the line they draw. But that's not the line the enemy draws. The enemy says they exist to impose Allah's divine law, Sharia, on the world through all means, which includes propaganda, political influence operations, subversion, espionage, counterintelligence, and that is how they're winning the war. The fact that the Muslim Brotherhood controls the narrative in this entire war is evidenced by the fact that we lost in Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, despite the fact our military on the ground crushed the enemy. The fact that we are totally losing the war is evidenced by the fact that our domestic counterterrorism policies have been an utter failure. Ask the average American, has the threat increased or decreased since 9/11? I've never had anybody look at me and seriously say, no, we think that the terrorist threat has decreased since 9/11. Everybody sees it. Globally, they see it. And so the question is, well, maybe that means our strategy is catastrophically failing us. And of course it is, because we have built foreign policy, war-fighting strategy, and domestic counterterrorism strategy on a fantasy that it has nothing to do with Islam. It's what Mr. Clinton told us. It's what Mr. Bush told us, G.W. Bush, and it's what Mr. Obama told us. You know, Mr. Trump's the only one who on national television said, Islam hates us, and we need to figure out why. That's right.
You got in all kinds of trouble for that. Well, hey, folks, it is 11:44 in the morning on a beautiful 17th of December, 8 days until Christmas, and you're listening to some troubling information from John Guandolo, the founder director of Understanding the Threat. John, I want you to tell how folks can reach you, but you just said that there is a criterion in the intelligence community, even in the warfare community, for figuring out good Muslim, bad Muslim, and that is the violence component. And you've gone on to explain that there's other elements to warfare, cultural warfare, or stealth jihad, any of these terms, where the kinetic component isn't used. You said, are these guys good or bad? We just had recently here in the state of Florida an attack a week ago at the Naval Air Station in Pensacola, and there was one shooter. But the night before the shooting, there were 10 Saudis watching at a dinner party with the shooter, watching violent attacks on Western targets. And during the shooting itself, some of those Saudis were just simply videotaping the event. Now, the guys who were videotaping the event, they didn't shoot anybody. Where does our federal government put them? Are they good guys because they didn't shoot anybody?
Well, they're not violent.
Yeah,
they're
not
violent.
violent.
They're just shooting the video.
How do you handle them?
Well, the law has a way to handle them, but I would also say we need to recognize this for what it is. Andrew McCarthy, who's a colleague of you all and of mine, who's the man who, as the chief counterterrorism prosecutor in the Southern District of New York at New York City, prosecuted the blind sheikh, Omar Abdel Rahman, and he said, he was, very clear about this, that we will not win this war in the courtrooms. We will not win this war by prosecuting. No war is ever won by simply prosecuting bad people. We have never, since 9/11, taken this war and used all powers of the U.S. government to destroy the enemy and win the war. That has not been our focus, to destroy the enemy and either get unconditional surrender or utterly obliterate the enemy. I think the last time the United States ever fought like that was World War II. And this is a much graver, much more imminent threat than what we faced in World War II. And yet, instead of bringing the entire citizenry, the entire mechanisms of government against it, financial warfare, the intelligence community, the law enforcement, the military, every piece of our society against this threat, it has been a very lackadaisical, no sense of urgency combat where we just thought that by crushing them over there, we'd be protecting ourselves over here, and by prosecuting people who want to shoot us or blow things up, that somehow that would contain it. And as we've seen since 9/11, the problem has got exponentially worse, and the reason is because there has been an utter failure to understand the nature of how the enemy intends to win the war. They do not intend to win the war primarily on the battlefield or through violence. The violence is used as a tool to advance the much greater, the 80%, 85% of what they're doing in the nonviolent. So when we can show the 3 Islamic organizations on the FBI's website that are their outreach partners are Muslim Brotherhood organizations, or you can show direct policies at DHS pushed through the Civil Rights Division or other parts of DHS which have influenced by the Muslim Brotherhood, or you can look at U.S. national policy on shutting down, using language to describe the enemy in the very way the enemy describes themselves through official, and we can do this. We do this in our training programs, and you can see where the Muslim Brotherhood says, hey, you can't talk about this, and then we watch. All of our national security documents are purged of language that defines the enemy.
Unbelievable.
So this is a very different kind of warfare. Their goal is to control the narrative of the war so that truth about Islam is never spoken. And here's the real kicker. How is it that I can take the most widely used textbook in U.S. Islamic schools for 12-year-olds? It's called What Islam's All About. And it specifically says things in there like the duty of Muslim citizens is to be loyal to the Islamic State, that jihad is one of the 3 obligations for all Muslims, and it's physically confronting, quote, evil and wrongdoing. Evil and wrongdoing is defined by Sharia, that the purpose of Islam is to impose Sharia on the earth. How is it we can show that they teach their children this in America in Islamic schools? And that's exactly the opposite of what Islamic leaders are telling our leaders. That's a question.
Well,
how is that?
Yeah, how is that? And people can learn more about that by going to your website. What's your website?
UnderstandingTheThreat.com. And if your listeners only do one thing, I would encourage them to go to the website, sign up for our newsletter, and
Great site.
You will get connected to all of our, we have the online radio show, the TV show, the weekly presentations, interactive presentations, the articles, all of our resources, all those things you'll get connected, our social media, if you just get on the newsletter.
All right, you're listening to Tom Trento, your host with John Guandolo, founder, director of Understanding the Threat. J. Mark is in the control room.
Hello.
And we're coming around on the final lap here. And what I wanted you to do, John, is right in context of what we're talking about. There are 3 stories that we're following here at the United West. And I wanted to give you 3 pieces of a puzzle and have you assemble these 3 stories into some coherent whole. One of them occurred about a week ago. Muslim community leaders and advocates met with none other than Nancy, I need some new false teeth, Pelosi, at a historic meeting. American Muslims asked Pelosi for a vote on the No Ban Act in February of 2017, right after Donald Trump got into office. He said, look, we got crazy countries out there. I want a 90-day ban to check these people out. We're not going to let anybody in the country anymore. We're going to do something about it. It went to the Supreme Court. June of 2018, the Supreme Court decided in Donald Trump's favor. We have a ban now. 7 countries, 5 Islamic countries, North Korea and Venezuela. We're keeping thousands of people out who should not belong here.
32,000 right now.
But there's a movement in the U.S. Congress. American Muslim organizations and civic rights organizations, political and religious leaders met with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi at her Capitol Hill office to talk about the urgent issues facing the American Muslim community. Now, check this out, which includes rampant anti-Muslim bigotry like John Guandolo and the Muslim ban. It's believed that one of the first official meetings of its kind ever to meet with the speaker. So there's this big meeting with Muslim advocates. That's that organization for Hana Kahira. That took place. That's puzzle piece number 1. Puzzle piece number 2 is this creeping, it's been labeled theoprogressivism. And what it means, if you're not aware of it, I wasn't aware of it until recently.
Progressing to what?
There's a bunch of young Muslim men and women led by Linda Sarsour who are dyed-in-the-wool Muslims, but they're adopting a progressive political agenda, women's rights, pro-abortion, all of this, which is out of line with historic Islamic doctrine. So we have that as a second puzzle piece. The third puzzle piece is the attack I mentioned a bit earlier of the Saudis. It seems like a Saudi cell was at the Naval Air Station in Pensacola. Take a couple of minutes here and assemble these apparently disconnected pieces into a coherent whole and help our folks understand what's going on here.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you. These are three very different pieces, but they all fit together very well. When you understand the threat, the entire purpose of the global Islamic movement, because it is the purpose of Islam, is to establish Allah's divine law, Sharia, Islamic law, in the land, on the whole earth, through all means possible. Now, let's go back to the 1600s, it was, or we could go back to the 700s at the, Battle of Tours, or the 1200s, or the whatever, but just go back to the 1600s and the gates of Vienna, September 11th, 1683. And what we see is when the Muslims came to town, people that thought that Muslims were nice, it was very easy to say, well, they're actually not. They're beheading people. They're raping women. This is what they're doing. They're capturing our girls and our women. They're capturing our men or killing them. It was very easy to see. The tactics, the lines of operation today in the West, in Europe and the United States, is they wear suits. They lie and pretend, and they say they're all about human rights and all these things. And actually, they're on record. The entire Muslim world is on record in the Cairo Declaration at the head of state and king level of all 57 member states of the largest voting bloc in the UN, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. Every Islamic nation on the planet, 57 member states, have all signed off to the Cairo Declaration that says when we say the phrase human rights, we mean Sharia. How Sharia is our only reference for human rights as the Muslim world relates to the non-Muslim world. And of course, in Sharia, non-Muslims must be converted to Islam, submitted to Islamic law, and pay a non-Muslim poll tax. If you're Christian or Jew or Zoroastrian, all others are just killed or converted, or you're killed. Those are your three options. It means if you commit adultery, you're stoned to death. If you're homosexual, you're stoned to death. If you steal, your hands are cut off. That's the entire objective. So let's start with that. Now, each of these three pieces then fits in perfectly. They are, under Sharia, you can work with non-Muslim entities to advance Islam so long as you never violate Sharia. So they can work with Marxists. They can lie and say, yes, we have common cause with you. Yes, yes, so long as it advances Islam. So we know, as a matter of fact, at the local, state, and national level of the United States and in Europe, that the international Marxist movement is working hand in hand with the Islamic movement. At the very low, with Antifa, with Black Lives Matter, with Comintern, with Communist Party USA, with what was previously called Freedom Road Socialist Organization, Code Pink. You guys have talked about this stuff over the years.
John, we got about a minute left with you. We'll have to continue this on another show.
So these groups are working with each other. We know that. So number one, when they go to meet with our leaders, the cause is always to defeat us. That's the point. And this is what I was talking about. In the nonviolent realm, they are trying to get national policies set to advance their cause and win the war because they are intent on winning the war. The Saudi attack at the Naval Air Station Pensacola is a military attack on a U.S. military base.
Right.
And I would put money that the Saudi government knew it was happening. I encourage people to go to our website, read the blog article we did last week, where there is massive evidence from the CIA and the FBI that directly links the government of Saudi Arabia to the 9/11 attacks. They had foreknowledge, and they supported the attacks. So all we need to know is that the movement is unified. We keep thinking they're all this disparate, different things. It's all unified in one objective.
Oh, well, that's great news for today. But you know what? This is the type of information, ladies and gentlemen, where we help make America think again. Please go to understandingthethreat.com, John Guandolo. John, thank you very, very much for clarifying and frightening people All of this is critical because in a little over 300 days, we're going to have an election in the United States that's going to select a leader that understands this to some degree, like President Trump, or that's going to be carrying the water for the other side, whether they know it or not. They're going to be a useful idiot. It's so important. Wake up, America, please. John, take care.
Thank you very much for having me.
Little bump out for it, John.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. We'll get down to the end. Anyway, Tom Trento saying goodbye on this beautiful Tuesday the 17th. We'll see you tomorrow on Wednesday the 18th. Make America think again. That's our job.